Honestly, I thought Runaway, Bride and Grooms was just in the movies, you know? I'm like, who actually gets left at the altar? Or who actually sneaks out the bathroom window on their wedding day? Like, I thought that was all a fairy tale, well, a nightmare. But in fairy tale land, no. These are real stories. These are real times that there were runaway bride or grooms. Cheers to not being left at the altar, because I don't think I could emotionally handle that. I haven't even made it to the altar, but I really hope I'm not standing up there alone when that time comes. Grab your beverage of choice. It's hydration station time. Cheers. I am the homewrecker. All right, I'm gonna try to keep an open mind here because you guys all know how I feel about cheating, but we're all human and no one's perfect and we all make mistakes. We're gonna keep an open mind. I'm gonna keep some of my thoughts to myself. I stood up during, if anyone should give reason, and blurted out, "Don't," to the guy I've loved since junior year of high school. I was 25 when this happened. We are now in our 30s. While his and her entire party of wedding guests stared daggers at me. Well, rightfully so. He walked off the altar and we met halfway in the aisle and I told him, "I love you, please don't." This is like a scene from a movie. He stared at me for what seemed like an eternity, walked back over to his would-be bride, told her he didn't love her, and that it wasn't right that they got married. He said he was sorry. She slapped him. I tried to apologize, but was cut off. She screamed at me. No, we were not friends or acquaintances. So why were you there, the wedding, to do this? And I deserved the humiliation and berating. I walked out and across the parking lot of the venue. He followed shortly after. We walked for several blocks in silence and sat in the park, just stunned. He moved his things out the next day and stayed in a hotel for a few weeks, got his own place. We moved in together 3 months after. I married him in a small private location ceremony with a handful of people present. We've been married for 10 years. Well, good for you. It seems like you both deserve each other, I guess. That's all I'm gonna say on that.
A few moments later.
For the bride, this obviously is a blessing in disguise because clearly he doesn't love you, like he said, so you don't want to marry him anyway. You don't want to marry him anyway. If he doesn't love you and he's gonna do that, you don't want him. Bye-bye. A woman I briefly dated was a runaway bride. Her ex never hit her, but constantly belittled her and was basically emotionally abusive. Telling her she was lucky he wanted her, that she could never find anyone better, that she was ugly, but he dealt with it, etc. This is why it's important for everyone, male, female, I don't care. This is important for people, humans, to know your worth, always. She was a smart kid. She was a medic in the military, saved dozens of lives in Pakistan, but emotionally manipulative people can get anyone if given enough time, and he got her. That's really, really sad. On her wedding day, her dad, who wasn't usually in the picture, having divorced her mom when she was a teen, was having a conversation with her in the ready room and got concerned when she started repeating a lot of things her fiance was saying to her. She said that she was mid-sentence when he stood up and said, "Let's go to Dairy Queen," out of the blue. When she was little, they often went to DQ and talked over ice cream. Why am I gonna cry? Oh my God, why am I getting emotional? This is so stupid. No, I literally have tears in my eyes over that. I hope this isn't sad. She took a second, agreed, and they left to go to Dairy Queen. But he drove 3 towns over and they sat and talked over ice cream for hours while her phone rang and the battery died in the car. She said she felt like a huge weight was lifted and felt bad that her friends and family were waiting for her, but they would all understand later. He eventually went back to the church and told the bridal party it wasn't happening and got his buddies to come and move all her stuff out the next day. She said that while her dad wasn't the best father in her teens, he was the best dad anyone could ask for that day. Why am I gonna cry? Oh my God, it is so weird how the most random stories, it'll just hit me. That whole Dairy Queen thing just like hit me because I'm like, man, he quite literally like saved her from an abusive relationship, whether that's emotional, physical, and he wasn't the best dad, but that day he just noticed this isn't right. I need to save my baby girl. And that just makes me so emotional. We're not gonna cry. Holy moly, are you okay, Joce? Are you okay? I went to a lovely wedding of a friend of mine. It was a classic fairy tale wedding. Big white dress for the bride, tux for the groom, horrible dresses for the bridesmaids, family friend as the priest, you know the drill. The ceremony goes well, no crying babies, no interrupting ex-lovers, and the vows have nearly everyone crying. And then we come to the big question. Do you take this man or woman to be your husband and wife? A simple question, right? Well, the groom decided to be a little romantic. He was going to respond, no, I take her as much more than that, as my lover, my wife, and my very best friend. Unfortunately, he didn't get that far. He says, no, I do not. And before he can finish, his fiancée begins to scream at him. And in about the space of 2 minutes, we find out that she stole money from him and made a little nest egg, had been cheating on him for the last year with 3 different guys, and made about a dozen insults to the guy's physical appearance. She then storms off out of the church with her bridesmaids in tow. And what I'll never understand is why even go as far as the wedding day? If you know all this information, why even go as far as the wedding day and get up there to the altar before all that comes out? Why waste your time, your money, your life? But that's easy for me to say. I'm not the one in it. I'm sure he was hoping it would work out maybe. He's like, maybe if we get married, it'll fix this. You know, the good old band-aid on the problem situation. Well, I feel like that was almost like, that's runaway bride and groom at that point. My entire 4th grade class was in attendance at our teacher's wedding. Oh, where she was left at the altar. Well, that's awkward. The whole situation was ugly. My teacher was the bride and was about 3/4 way down the aisle when the groom decided he couldn't do it. Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed already. He walked off to the side, and at first my teacher and her father didn't notice and kept walking, smiling radiantly. There was about a minute of really solid confusion. Last minute cold feet, bathroom emergency, before everyone realized what was going on. My teacher was whisked out of the church and an announcement was made that there was not going to be a wedding. This happened the 2nd or 3rd week of June. She didn't come back for the last week of school. Guys, I would be so devastated. I would probably just go up to the altar and just marry myself. Are you kidding? That would be awful. That would be the worst feeling in the entire world. I'm telling you, I better glue Matt's feet to that altar if that time comes. I swear. We're using super glue, motherfucker. You ain't going anywhere. I'm still snotty from the cry I had earlier. Like, I need help. I'm emotional. I'm a bit hazy on the details since I was 8 when this happened. Okay, are you making this up? But in 2006, I was attending my cousin's wedding and she was getting married to this guy she met about 6 months prior. It was definitely an expensive wedding. Prior to the ceremony, there was practically a circus outside waiting to entertain. Anyway, once the ceremony started, they said all the general common things for a wedding, but once it was the groom's turn to say his vows, he just froze all of a sudden. He stood there staring in his fiance's eyes for 5 minutes and then promptly sprinted down the aisle and into the road. He took a golf cart that happened to be on the grounds and drove off. Apparently, he was divorced, but he didn't get over his ex-wife, so he tried to get her back. Getting married 6 months after meeting someone who came out of a relationship, maybe not the best idea. So maybe that's a little quick, and maybe you guys have a success story where you're like, no, I got engaged 6 months in, married 8 months in, and we're happily married to this day. I could never. Clearly, I'm 4.5 years in with someone and I'm still not engaged. I'm ready to be engaged at this point, you know? We're excited for that time. But 6 months in, anyone can put on their best behavior for 6 months, okay? Yeah, that's a no for me. My pastor once officiated a wedding. He had done all the premarital counseling for the couple. They seemed good and fine. Got to the altar, he did his opening prayer and welcome. He gets to the part where he says, do you take this woman to be your wife? And the guy looked at her, back at him, and said, no. Pastor laughed a little and repeated the question, thinking he misunderstood, but the guy stopped him and said, no, I don't. He took the groom aside to the back room where the guy essentially said that he couldn't do it, that the bride and her mother had manipulated the whole wedding, and he had been too chicken to stand up to her before, but that he couldn't throw his life away. They brought in both families and had a very real conversation, and then the pastor had to go back out and explain to the very uncomfortable congregation, did I say that right? That there would be no wedding today, that the guests could help themselves to some refreshments, but the rest of the evening events were canceled. How awkward, you guys. I'm just picturing being that pastor and having to go out there and be, excuse me, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. Feel free to grab some refreshments before heading out because they are no longer getting married and this is no longer a wedding. Thank you so How awkward. You better grab that refreshment though. It happened to my sister. Oh no. No. He lost his bottle and didn't show. He was a turd anyway. I, as one of her 3 brothers, joined the other 2 on a bit of a manhunt, but we didn't find him. He was apparently already out of town. My sister didn't really react at first, but my father, several thousand out of pocket, wasn't so quiet. The groom's family, friends, and relatives all apologetically and sheepishly melted away as our lot went on for the meal and a drink. Our father ended up being arrested for basically threatening to wipe out his family over the whole thing a few weeks later, and my sister held her head up throughout, came out with her dignity, and carried on. Good for her. If you're out there, Tim, we still haven't forgotten what a cowardly shite you are. Tim, you are most wanted, sir. Literally. There's probably a poster around town. This is a murder case unsolved because people are after you, sir. People are after you. I mean, that is, let's be honest, that's cowardly. That's super cowardly. At least have the dignity to say it to my face that I don't want to marry you. This is a mistake. Not that I would want that, but like, I would rather that than you running away. This was sometime in the 70s. My uncle in India was attending the wedding of some not so close friends. Totally common to have 1,000 people at a wedding with many people that barely know the couple in attendance. Oh, that's like a concert. The bride was left at the altar and literally standing on the stage and waiting while everyone was watching. My uncle stepped up and said he'd marry her. He must have felt some sudden rush of Bollywood go through him. Anyway, she said yes, and they are happily married to this day. That's literally a movie plot. No, that's literally a movie plot, you guys. Oh my God, have you seen Marry Me? With J-Lo and Owen Wilson? It's this. It's literally this. She finds out he's cheating. She doesn't marry him as she's at the wedding, at the altar on stage. She doesn't marry him, looks out in the crowd. There's Owen Wilson holding a sign and she's like, I'm gonna marry him, and she marries the dude. It's literally the story. Around 1999, my uncle got engaged to this woman named Erin, who was beautiful. We loved her and she had a son in a big country house. She gets pregnant. My uncle speed walks through the wedding planning, and at the altar, she reveals that she was effing their gardener. And it's his baby, and leaves to the other room. What a time and place to tell me that. He ended up trashing her beloved Jeep in the parking lot with a chair. He's prone to rages and leaving. Well, I think he had a right to be angry. I'm not agreeing with the car smashing, but who would not be angry by that? I was at the wedding for one of my sister's friends who was the bride. The bride never showed up at the wedding and no one could find her. After several hours, the groom and his family all went home. Turned out the bride went for a wild night of partying and slept with some guy she met at a club. Girl, she passed out drunk at his place all day long before she came around and realized she missed her own wedding. She was out with a friend that did nothing to stop her from getting wasted and screwing around. I think her friend let her get carried away because she thought the bride wouldn't have been a good wife and figured it was the easiest way to get the couple to split up. Okay. The father of the bride was mad as hell about the expense of the wedding that came out of his pocket. The groom has since moved on with his own life. The bride has been having problems trying to get the respect of her family back after the stunt. Yeah, understandably so. My friends and family would be so disappointed in me. Are you kidding me? Like, you're not only hurting the groom in that situation. You know that, right? Anyways, do you know a real life runaway bride or groom story? Because apparently it's real. It's not just in the movies, you guys, which is why we're gonna super glue Matt onto the floor. Anyways, I'm out of here. I have an itch. Stay classy out there, stay sassy, and I'll see you tomorrow.